This video will cover computing data summaries over groups in dplyr. The code shown in this video is available in the Learning Management System. You'll need the hourly weather 2017.rds data file. You should download both of them now if you'd like to follow along. By the end of this video, you should know how you compute data summaries over groups using dplyr, how you can use multiple variables to define groups for summaries, and how grouping data can change the way it is processed in R. So far in R, we've covered computing summary statistics over the entire data set. But often you want to compute summary statistics for groups within your data. Instead of having one mean, minimum, or maximum, you want several. So for example, using data that we've had before, what is the high and low temperature in each month? You can tell R to compute data summaries over groups using the dplyr verb group_by. Group by is a dplyr verb. You'll give it a list of variables separated by commas. This tells R which variables to use to group the data. After that, you'll use a summarize verb to compute the summaries. The summaries will be computed for each unique value of the variables in group by. After summarizing, your data will have both the summary variables and the group by variables in the resulting data set. How does this work in practice? You group your data before you summarize it. So in this example, I take a weather data table, I pipe it to the group by verb. Here I specify month as the variable I'd like to group on. I then take that and pipe it to the summarize verb. Then I say that I'd like to compute the minimum temperature and the maximum temperature. Let's take a look at this in R. First, I'll load my setup code. If you remember, the hourly weather data has some NA values in it. I'll filter those out before I compute any summaries. Let's go through and do that exact example that was in the slides. I'll take my weather.noNA table. I'll pipe it to the group by verb. I specify month as the variable I'd like to compute my summaries over. And then I pipe that to the summarize verb. And I say that I'd like to create min.temp equal to the minimum temperature and max.temp equal to the maximum temperature. I'll run that. You can see the resulting output that I get has one value for each value of the month variable, 1 through 12. Then the corresponding min and max temperature columns have the minimum value and maximum value of temperature within that month. The group by verb allows multiple variables as arguments. Each one is separated by a comma. If you specify multiple variables, R will create a group for each unique combination of values in those variables. So what exactly does this mean? Suppose with our hourly weather data, we say group by month and hour. How many groups will there be? R is going to look in those variables and create one group for each unique combination of month and hour. There are 12 months and 24 hours in each day. That means there are 288 groups because there are 12 month combinations by 24-hour combinations. I have that example code here in R. Again, I take my weather noNA table. I pipe it to group by, but this time I include both the month and the hour columns. I pipe that to summarize. I'll add an additional variable this time and compute the mean temperature as well. Let's run that and see what we get. You can see in the output window, I have a column for month, hour, minimum temperature, mean temperature, and maximum temperature. There are 288 observations, as I expected, one for each combination of the month variable, which ranges from 1 to 12, and the hour variable, which ranges from 0 to 23. The corresponding summary statistics are the average within each of those groups. So in the first line, the minimum temperature in hour 0 in January was -8, and the maximum temperature in hour 0 in January was 16. It's important to understand how group by works. The group by verb is sticky in that it follows your data around. If you group a tibble and then store it to a variable, R remembers how it's grouped. Starting with dplyr 1.0, summarize will change the grouping of your data. If you only have one grouping variable, it just removes the groups. If you have multiple grouping variables, it removes the first one that you specified in your group by statement, but it's going to keep grouping by the other variables. I'll show you in a minute why, but sometimes you might want to get rid of grouping. You can do that with the ungroup verb. This will remove all grouping from your data. Why might you care about the grouping? When your data are grouped, R runs each dplyr verb over every group as opposed to over your entire data set. Mechanically, it's not a big deal for most of the stuff we've covered so far. Verbs like mutate and filter only look at each row when they're computing results, so grouping really doesn't matter. The grouping can slow R down. You'd notice this with large data sets with lots of groups. Grouping does impact verbs that depend on the order of your data set. So for example, the slice verb, which before would just give us the first observation, for example, in a tibble, will actually do that over each group in your data set. This can lead to unexpected results. So let's work through some examples of storing grouped data. I'll take that weather.knowNA tibble, and I'll group it by month and store it in a new tibble called weather.grouped. There's a couple of things that I'd like you to notice. First, if you print out the weather.grouped tibble and look in the output window, you can see that it describes the tibble differently now, saying that there are groups on the variable month and there are 12 of them. So as you can see, R has stored that grouping information in this new tibble that we've created. Going back to my code, because R has stored that grouping information, if I now run an operation on this tibble, it will treat it as though the data were already grouped, because they are. Here I'll summarize the mean temperature and look at my results in the output window. You can see, even though that series of dplyr commands didn't have group by inside of it, the fact that the data were grouped was stored with it, and when I compute the summary statistics, they're grouped by month. Going back to my code, sometimes you might like to remove the grouping from your data. To do that, you can use the ungroup verb. This will remove all grouping information from your tibble. I'll run that now. And if you look at my output, the grouping information is no longer in the tibble description. Going back to my code, as one last example, just to show you how grouping can maybe give you different results than you would normally expect, I take my weather.grouped tibble and I pipe it to the slice verb, specifying the first observation. Normally, this would have given us just one observation from our data, but here, because the data are grouped, R is going to pull out the first observation within each group. I'll run that so we can see what we get. And if you look in the output window, you can see that my resulting tibble has one observation for each month. The data were sorted by time, so the first observation in each case was day 1 and hour 0 of that month. Again, if this wasn't the behavior you were expecting, then you should ungroup your data first.